If you're wondering how you can produce a track for a K-pop boy group similar to NCT, Stray Kids, or some older BTS songs, I gotcha. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to produce an aggressive bass-driven track similar to Two Baddies by NCT or Maniac by Stray Kids. In the end, you're going to end up with something that sounds a bit like this. In my opinion, these types of tracks live somewhere in the crossroads between hyperpop and hip hop, so bass is really, really important for establishing this type of sound. So I've got two bass parts here layered together. Let's listen to them. So the reason this is layered like this is because the 808 provides the sub information, the really low frequency information that on speakers creates that giant boom that we're all looking for from these powerful, aggressive type tracks. But the main bass here is providing more of the cut. So the higher frequency information that's going to cut through smaller speakers. And if you notice, they're not playing the exact same part. They play complementary parts. The 808 actually provides the one hit. So the hit on the first beat of the bar. And then the wide bass, it's a little bit more rhythmic and it is providing that. But the wide bass is providing all the rhythm. So let's take a look at the construction here. The main synth bass part is created with Serum. So you can see here, I'm using a preset from Hexagon Sounds. Generally, I really recommend looking for presets for Serum if you're not a sound designer specifically. For me, I sound design certain things better than others, more so drums, vocals versus this type of thing. So for me, it was, the best strategy just to go through different types of presets I have and find this. And I find that really if you just work on the attack, the ADSR, release sustain, you can kind of adjust the preset to be what you want it to be. A big part of this specific processing too is that I am running this through Haas effect, which really is just widening this bass, or at least creating a perception of it being wider. And it's very, very noticeable. If you listen without it, this sounds like this. And with it. Now I am sidechaining to the kick here. This is very important for these types of tracks. Honestly, any track you should really sidechain the bass and the kick, but something like this where it's really mostly bass, you really don't want it to overpower the kick. So you want to create that space for the kick to poke through and then duck back out. The 808 part sounds like this when it's soloed. And as you can see, this is created with Sublab. I'm using the chest hair preset, which is one of the best presets that they have. I use it all the time. And then I just changed the type of distortion, which literally changes the sound completely, because without it, see, it's totally different sound. Or if you go from tube to, let's say, overdrive, that's so different. Obviously I chose something buzzier because, again, that buzz helps cut through the smaller speakers, and I'm pitch bending in certain spots like this, which is something very common in hip hop. But yeah, again, like I mentioned, this part is here to provide the depth, the sub, the longer whole notes, while the synth bass is here for rhythm. And that's why they work well, in my opinion, in this context. The next very important element to this type of style is, of course, the drum production. Really, a lot of these aggressive boy group type tracks are pretty much bass and drums. If you take Maniac, for example, the chorus production is mostly effects, drums, and bass. So as you can see here, I've broken up my drum production. I have a portion of it grouped in my sort of main group, and then I have some other drums, which are all the dark blues, here in the subgroup. The reason I did this is because of how I mix. This group right here has an EQ like this, which is actually removing a lot of the bass frequencies. I only wanted them to come from from the 808 and the synth bass, and I didn't want anything else to get in the way. This is a very easy way to make sure your low end seems and feels cleaner. And then I'm also removing the frequencies in which I poke my vocals. So if we take a look at the kicks, I actually am pairing the kicks with a stomp here. This is pretty interesting. So we obviously have the main kick, which sounds like this. This is a very appropriate name. It is a really clean kick. It's subby. It's got a little bit of a top, like the higher frequency information. So yeah, you can see here I'm boosting the transient on the low end with neutron. And then I'm also pairing it with a kick top, which is actually a different kick. A lot of the times I use the same kick and just process it differently. This is a different sample. If you listen to it without the EQ, oh, interesting. Let me take this off too. This is a kick that has a very prominent top or click, whatever you want to call it. That high frequency information is really prominent in it. So you could tell this one I'm using for the sub information and the lower mids. And this one, you know, I'm removing all of that information and just using the click. And I'm also boosting it with glue compressor to just make it like a little bit crunchier. And this is what they sound like together. Without the top, with the top. Generally, I find that having a kick that really cuts through and has this top is good for almost all songs. I do think it's hard to make just a purely subby kick like pop in a mix, which is why I do this. And then, of course, I have these stomps. So we have a main stomp here, which is very much like a roomy sound. It's from Sophie's Splice Pack, which makes sense because, like I said, I was thinking hip hop meets hyperpop here, and Sophie, of course, was known for incredible hyperpop production, which is why I'm using this here. And I am taking off some of the bottom of it because I already have a lot of subby information from my main kick and from my 808, so I don't need it. And then I've got another stomp that just happens on the fronts of every other bar. Oh, this is fun. Also from Sophie, also removing the low end. Anytime you're trying to produce anything with a lot of energy, a lot of anger in it, distortion is a pretty fair bet. You just have to be careful in which elements you apply it on, because if everything is distorted, it's, you know, too much. Now, this is what our snare and clap combo sounds like. Now, my clap does happen every time, and then my snare is an alternate. You know, it happens every other time, just for emphasis, for texture. The main clap I'm using is this. I'm not gonna lie, this specific clap I've used in probably like 50 songs in the last couple of years. I just really like what it sounds like. It's like a perfect, just good hip hop clap. Nothing wrong with it, goes with every track. And then what I do to change it up is layer it like I do here. We've got a Sophie clap. Again, taking off a little bit of the bottom here. It's very metallic, totally different texture with it. As you can see, it adds roominess to this whole sound. Makes it a little bit more odd, more interesting, which I think works very well in this type of track. Generally, I think using percussion that's slightly off the beaten path is a good move for this style of track. If you listen to Two Baddies here, wow, we've got a wooden rim here used instead of an 808 clap or snare, something a little bit more expected. And we've got metallic percussion featured specifically in this versus 808 hats, which also would be something more expected for this type of style. So I really encourage you guys to experiment with this. So of course, if you look at my emphasis snare here, it sounds like this. Very wide, very much meant as an accent. And we have two layers here. This one, also from Sophie. And again, another clap from Sophie, which is generally a point I want you guys to think about. It's good to know the producers that you're inspired by, and if they have sample packs that they sell themselves or on Splice or any other platform, it's really good to be able to use those if you're inspired by their style and want to have certain elements similar to their music in your own tracks. And to emphasize the hyperpop of it all, I'm even doubling certain snare hits with metallic percussion. Again, one from Sophie. It's just a little metal hit. And we have an 808 hat here, which usually I don't do this as much because I like to use my own MIDI presets that I've made with different hats that I've picked over the years. But I think I just really enjoyed this loop, and I took it and I cut it up and kind of made my own pattern, which I think is really important because it will help you make your track more unique versus just using somebody else's hat composition verbatim. Another important element to this style of production are effects. A lot of the times, this type of style can have almost campy effects like sirens, screams, sounds of helicopters. It's almost a bit cinematic, anything to create that feeling of danger and intensity. So I do have a few of these more campy style effects here. A lot of them have to do with cars because the song is called Lamborghini. So we've got this here. And as you can tell, I'm making sure that this sample is rhythmic. It isn't, just random car engines revving. It is very much like with the beat on the beats. And I'm not doing a whole lot to process it. It's mostly out of the can. A little bit of Haas effect, and a little bit of brightening around 5K just to kind of make it cut through the mix yet again. And I've got even a couple of extra car effects here. And this one is the exact same as this, but I reversed it and made a sweep out of it. And then we have this strange sort of, I don't know if this is an effect or if this more qualifies as a synth. Yeah, it's just a loop that I found that I've cut up and replaced. I'm curious what this sounded like originally. Okay, I see. So I really liked the front part of it, but I, changed the ending. Yeah, I think I manually found the pitches that I wanted this to do. It also has like sort of transposition added to it just to create that verify sort of effect. Generally, this is a type of technique I encourage you guys to try. For unique moments like this, it's better to spend time looking through your sample library, finding something interesting that you can kind of cut up, repitch, versus writing a thing from scratch. And then we've got some effects like these yells here. I'm not doing a whole lot here. I'm just increasing the volume as they go. Chants, haze, yo, a, like all of those things do add a lot of energy and context. And then there's a few others like this effect here. This is really cool. Again, from the Sophie kit, I feel like I just was really inspired by the sample pack at the moment. So finally, what I'd like to show you about this track are not individual elements, but the overall dynamics. This is something extremely important for these types of beats because they can get very repetitive. So we start with that weird effect, that cut up thing that I did, and the cars. And then it drops into the main sort of beat. And we don't have the hats here yet. The hats are almost like an elevation technique. It only happens, I believe, in the post-chorus or the second half of the chorus, but not in the intro. So then after this, we go here for the verse. We drop out for 2 bars just because without this, it would just keep going and keep going. And also dropping out allows us to bring in a couple of other elements like this bell here. Which creates just enough difference to keep it interesting. And then we do the same thing here. We drop out for another 2 bars, but we have some extra percussion and effects to still keep that sonic interest. And then after this section, we go straight to pre-chorus. This is the one part where our bass part drops out, you know, the main synth bass that kind of characterizes this track. We get a little bit of extra synth information here. We have that clap buildup, which doesn't happen in any other sections. You know, we take out the kick, we take out the snare, and this is what allows it to kind of breathe. And right after, we drop into the chorus. And on the second half, add the hat. I feel like dynamics is one of those things people don't talk about enough in production. It's actually something that I discuss a lot over on my Patreon page, where I post a lot of extra tutorials, very long ones. Some of them are like 2 hours long, where I really dig into different techniques, minute techniques and mixing on specific tracks, overall discussions like what we're having about dynamics just now. So it's a really great place, and I would love for you guys to check it out. But on that note, I'm gonna go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!